What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a film that I was lucky enough to get to go see an advanced screening of my local AMC theater. Got this movie early. It's only for one showtime, and they had it this evening. And I was lucky enough to go check it out. And I really didn't know anything about this movie whatsoever. Just knew the title. I hadn't watched a trailer for this movie, hadn't looked anything up about it, so I really didn't know what I was going to get myself into. And then I was really excited when I got into the theater and saw the production companies were coming up on the screen, and one of them was Shudder. So Shudder is affiliated with this movie. It is going to be coming to Shudder, I believe what I read online after I watched the film, sometime in June. It's getting a theatrical release June 9th, and the film I'm going to be talking about today is The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster is directed by Bomani J. Story. Vicaria is a brilliant teenager who believes death is a disease that can be cured. After the brutal and sudden murder of her brother, she embarks on a dangerous journey to bring him back to life. So I had no idea what to expect from this movie because I didn't know anything about it whatsoever before I went in to see it, and I really enjoyed this movie a lot. If Shudder is releasing this movie, it's probably going to be one of my favorite movies released on Shudder this year. I think that it takes something that we are very familiar with, the story of Frankenstein, and completely transforms it and turns it into something unique and different and poignant as far as it comes to social commentary. We're introduced to our lead character, Vicaria, played by Laya DeLeon Hayes, who gives a phenomenal performance in this film. And we're introduced to her at the beginning of the film, and we see that she's giving a monologue talking about death and how death is a disease. And she talks about how when she was a very young girl, her mother was killed while she was literally sitting on a park bench with her mother. She was shot right while she was leaning her head up against her. Her brother witnessed the murder. Years later after that, her brother grows up, gets involved in gang violence with this gang that lives in the community that she lives in, and shortly after, her brother is also murdered. And then after her brother's murder, it's just her and her dad becomes addicted to drugs as a coping mechanism to get over the loss of both his wife and his son. And Vicaria is a very intelligent young woman. She goes to a private school. She's pushing herself to gain an education, and she lives in this really impoverished community where people are trying to thrive while at the same time living amongst these gangs that sell drugs out there. There's consistent violence, there's shootings that are going on, and while all this is going on, Vicaria is playing Frankenstein essentially. She's collecting these bodies, and she is trying to bring her brother back to life, and the film plays on from there. So as I said, I really enjoyed this movie because it was a very different take on the Frankenstein story. Obviously, we live in a very scary society right now where the rights of all people are being attacked. When you look at people of color, when you look at the LGBTQ community, where these minority groups are being targeted purposefully in a way that is so horrible and terrible and awful. And when you're looking at film as a whole, film is a great way to bring light to some of these issues and to discuss them in a very open format. And taking something like the Frankenstein story and applying it to situations that everyday people have to go through was a really interesting idea. And I'm glad that the director utilized this storytelling method and applied it to situations that people actually go through, because we're watching, amidst this very fantastical idea of having the ability to bring someone back to life and what you could do if you could bring someone back into existence. You're also tackling these ideas of, Black people trying to thrive in communities that are lower income in a way that is so poignant and thought-provoking. The way you constantly have to look over your shoulder when the police are there, when you're a person of color. Just all of these topics that are so poignant in day-to-day life are covered in this film through not only the dialogue, but circumstances that are shown, and also showing like how people don't necessarily get the choice as to what they do with their lives when it comes to living in lower income areas, especially when it comes to drug dealing or joining a gang. You see a very young man at the beginning of the film who ends up joining a gang, and one of these drug dealing groups because he doesn't really see another opportunity for himself. You're getting the opposite ends of the spectrum. You're seeing this young girl who's trying to make the best of her situation, gets the opportunity to go to a better school, but also faces challenges at that school. There's a really incredible scene where she has a confrontation with her teacher, and it's a really poignant moment where you see like a classroom filled with mostly white students when she's one of the few people of color that's in the classroom, and when she's asking really intellectual and thoughtful questions and the teacher isn't willing to be challenged, so immediately fights back and brings in a security officer to defuse the situation. And it's really, you know, eye-opening to see that, because as someone like myself who is a white man, I haven't had to go through these struggles in my life, and I haven't had to be profiled because of the color of my skin. And so watching these things, especially in a horror setting where the horror elevates these ideas in a way that's poignant for anyone who's going to watch, was really great to see. And aside from all of the really incredibly well-stated social commentary, you also get really fantastic horror elements. This movie is really grisly at moments. It has some really great violent sequences. And although there are moments where you could tell budgetary limitations kind of limited some of the visual effects, but most of them are really well done. And it's very grisly and it's very violent. And I think it's done really well. I think the pacing in this movie is good for the most part. Towards the third act, when it's wrapping up, it struggles to find its footing at moments, but I don't think it takes away from the overall message of the film. And I enjoyed myself throughout the runtime of this movie. I think it is so well acted. The performances in this are so incredible from top to bottom. Everyone is really dedicated to the material, and I think that comes through in it. And even though I do think that there are flaws with this movie, and I think there are a few pacing issues, like I said, towards the third act, I don't think that detracts from how cool it is to see a movie that is bringing light to really important social issues in a horror setting, which is something you don't always see. I think of the most recent Candyman film, and obviously, you know, directors like Jordan Peele who are bringing light to these situations in their film, but it hasn't always existed throughout the history of film. And so I think it's really cool to see directors shedding light on these really important issues. And this was a movie I really enjoyed myself on, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it when it comes to Shudder later on. I'm really glad that I got to see it in a theater at AMC, because it was really cool to see something like this on the big screen. And if you're a horror fan, you're definitely going to appreciate this movie as well, because there's some really great horror elements. There's some truly unsettling, spooky moments in this. I think that you're really going to enjoy yourself when you watch this movie. So have you seen The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really well done. I really enjoyed myself. I think it's a really fantastic horror film while also having really great, poignant social commentary. As always, if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.